Yes. We're live, mate.
Good. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Netherlands. Welcome to Dirkshorn, which I probably butchered, for Norwich City's friendly against AZ Alkmaar this evening, which is going to be really interesting test against what is a real high calibre of opponent. If I just move out of the way, we'll be able to see a pitch that is looking absolutely glorious. Around 2,000 expected here tonight. We've seen a few yellow shirts in and around the place, and we've spoken to a few people involved. Paddy's just fallen off a stand, but I'll bring you the team news if you haven't seen it already. Norwich City lining up with Gunn in goal, Stacey, Duffy, Gibson, and Giannoulis as the back four, Nunez and McLean as the midfield two, Rowe and Hernandez on either flank with Sargent behind Ashley Barnes. Paddy, it's taken us quite a mission to get here.
You've told the audience all the modes of transport.
I haven't, but I got
train.
I'm including car this morning, so my trip from my house to the station.
We walked, me and Adam.
You walked, yeah.
Got our steps up.
Then train, then plane, then train, then bus, then here. So it's been a long day. I think for me it started around 5:30 this morning. I think I was fucked up. So
there you go. Norwich keepers.
It's been a fun one, yeah. And it's been a long day. I mean, this sort of test, though, I mean, it's going to be really interesting, isn't it, to see where Norwich City are. I spoke to Kenny playing after the Darmstadt game a week ago now. He said that he thought their plan would be much more evident against a high quality of opponent. We've seen their work off the ball. It's probably going to be a really good insight as to what we can expect from the David Wagner team.
Yeah, I must confess I haven't looked at the Alkmaar team. Not that even if I did look, I'd necessarily tell you that's strong or not. But too busy pushing out the Norwich team news. But you would think, because they are well into their pre-season, I think they've already played Shakhtar Donetsk here by all accounts. And funny enough, Dan Hawker, very helpful head of comms for Norwich City, he told me this is the 26th year consecutively they've been here, because
they've already played a game here against Shakhtar Donetsk, which ended 3-3.
But that's why they're here. That's why they keep coming back here, because apparently the pitch, and apparently Andy Hughes has just said as well that this pitch is absolutely top draw for what they'll need. You know, the surroundings are quite quaint. We might get into that as we go through the broadcast, but you'd imagine this will be a step up from what Norwich have had so far in pre-season, and probably a reflection of that is that Norwich team news. Very strong, I would say.
How close do you think that will be to the team we see against Hull? Probably, obviously, minus additions, minus departures that we don't know yet. Do you feel the bulk of that will be what we
I think so. I think so, yeah. I think working it through in my own head, Gunn in goal, that back four, and Nunez,
you probably put Sarah
McLean, and would you necessarily go Johnny Rowe? Yeah, you probably take him out and Zara in, but other than that, injury and fitness permitting between now and Hull, this could well be that lineup that runs out in Carrow Road on August the 5th. And if it is, and it's against a level of opposition who finished top four in the Eredivisie last season, they got to the last four, as we know, Europa Conference League, got beat by West Ham over 2 late. If they can perform reasonably, competently and comfortably tonight, irrespective of the result, it's not about that, but that should engender a degree of optimism on the ball, because if they're able to, albeit it's pre-season, we know it's still technically about fitness, but if they're able to compete in phases of what they're trying to do with and without the ball, and benchmark it against a team who are a very good side in Holland at the moment, then I think that would be a positive. But they need to come out and show us a little bit more with the ball. I mean, we got into that in depth with you and Adam at Frankfurt after the Kaiserslautern game on the Pinkham podcast, and it felt like, without the ball, you can see all the work that David Wagner and his coaches have tried to do with them in terms of shape and positionally, individually, collectively, that cohesion. But with the ball, I think we pretty much reached the same conclusion in the podcast, that there's not a lot of progression from what we saw at the back end of last season, and that needs to change. And hopefully, when we get past tonight, Toulouse, in Austria, and then finally Olympiacos and Carrow Road, if we're talking a bit more positively about Norwich's work with the ball in the final third, then who knows? I think we'll roll into Hull with a bit more optimism.
Yeah, a trio of really good friends, it has to be said. And it's quite a mixed days at Alkmaar team. I won't go all the way down, but some notable names: Matt Ryan, who was at Arsenal for a little while, Brighton, wasn't he? Yeah, Jordi Classy, who was at Southampton for a little while. Pavlidis, who's kind of, I think he was their top scorer last season, Greek striker, international. Carlson, Poku is one to watch out for as well. So I think you're seeing strong-ish AZ Alkmaar team tonight, enough to make this a really good test. I'll just read you the bench as well. It's pre-season, it's very fluid. You'd expect plenty of changes. Norwich City have Krul, Fisher, Omar Ramadeli, McCallum, Gibbs, Springett, Mumba, Sholis, Poeta and Nida. They are the substitutes that have been named. I think Callum Fisher was named on Saturday that came on, so there might be a few ones around the edges. Abu Kamara, if you haven't seen him, he's moved to Portsmouth today, so I don't think he's been here anyway, has he? So that's obviously encouraged. That's what I mean, generally. So almost into one. That back four then, that's really interesting. On Ramadeli obviously out. We saw him play. He did play Kaiserslautern.
He started,
yeah. So obviously a slight fitness concern. He put that in the Republic blind squad. He featured a little bit later in pre-season than some. Obviously, plenty of speculation around here. That back four, so it does feel like he's probably going to be the one that Norwich move into the season with, unless obviously on the Ramadeli goes, and then we probably have another centre back to talk about.
Yeah, I'd agree. Yeah. I'm just trying to think as you're talking there, who would I take out that four now? Stacey, Duffy, Gibson, Yanulis. I think Barley Mama's doing enough at the present to sort of dislodge McCallum likewise. He might be a bit harsh because he's not a huge amount of minutes, but yeah, with Gunn behind him, I think that is probably Norwich's five as it stands. Because on Mabama Daly, there's the fitness element, and he's trying to work himself back into peak physical shape, and then the flip side is an expectation that there probably will be interest, and that could develop as we go from here. So you've got to deal with that when you're talking about him as well in his remaining week. So that to me does look potentially the five we could see against Hull, and if it is to be that, then we'd like to see a bit more from Gibson and Duffy, a bit more of that relationship and understanding coming through, and Stacey really just continuing the same thing, because he's really put down a strong marker in his opening games, and if he's turning it on tonight against this level of opponent, then what most observers who've watched any of pre-season think around Jack Stacey, that's only going to reinforce that, because as I say, keep stressing, you've read the Alkmaar team out there, this is probably a step up now in terms of anything Norwich have faced in pre-season. So in that regard, it's quite an exciting one to look forward to, even though it took us about 16 different modes of transport to get here.
Yeah, absolutely. An hour spent in transport as well, which has made it all better. But yeah, for you out the way, you'll be able to see the players just filtering out for their warm-up for this evening. Obviously at 5:30 kick-off in the UK, 6:30 here. We're obviously an hour ahead of you guys there. We get another look at the Sargent Barnes striking duo, whether you want to call it a striking duo or not, the way the graphic is lined up, and actually what it turned out to be at Kings Lynn was Sargent playing a little bit deeper than Barnes, and then I think at half-time it rotated. We saw a little bit of Barnes dropping deep into Adamida, so I think there's lots of fluidity within that. But the early signs at Kings Lynn were promising, but I guess if we see it here tonight against the calibre of opponent that we've spoken about, it's going to increase the excitement, particularly given all of the conversations around creativity and productivity as well.
Yeah, I mean, with the caveat it was Kings Lynn and it was, considerably lower down in terms of quality to what they'll face tonight. But two things. I mean, they scored 4 goals between them that day, which is, that's delivering a statement of its own. But also, more importantly, moving forward is even in one outing or one part of an outing, the intelligence, the two of them seem to complement each other's games. There was an interchangeability. You talked about it there. They were interchanging between the 9 and the 10 position. They wouldn't do that. Surely,
I trust
surely they wouldn't do that. They'll be aiming for us probably more likely. But so yeah, it was nice to see that, and that if you break down tonight's game and what we're looking to see, I think that's a facet. Can we see a bit more of that? But almost as if they're kidding on that they've played together for a number of times.
It's interesting actually. You might be able to see this in shot actually, maybe not, but just behind us there, they're basically on the pitch passing the ball to each other. So there were some signs like, look at that Paddy, look at that multimedia expert. You might be able to see Josh Sargent in some very nice pink boots if you are looking into the distance. Just playing the ball through each other, just trying to get that, I guess, understanding before the game kicks off. But it's all about seeing it when the game kicks off. And they certainly did at Kings Lynn, but like you say, you have to kind of caveat that with the opposition that they're up against. Adamida there as well, who's also in the conversation. I expect we will see some of I think you're right if that falls over.
I'm very concerned, yeah. Hopefully Adam will just double check the tripod. That looks
balanced.
It's more the legs.
That looks balanced, it's fine. We usually do this on our laptop screen, but it's a little bit different.
But to be fair, we're not normally this close to the action.
That's true.
I mean, guys are saying we needed binoculars to see players.
Yeah, that's true. Is there a possibility that because of what we've spoken about, that fact, the strength of the opposition as well, that Norwich City maybe look better from an attacking perspective, because it's not a game we don't think it could become that. Where they're going to have to really break down the team. It doesn't feel like, it feels like there's going to be a lot of space on the counter attack. You probably expect Alkmaar to have a little bit more of the ball without a massive knowledge of Alkmaar, I must confess. Is there a possibility that Norwich, I don't want to say it's like an illusion, I don't think that's fair, but it feels like this is a game that's probably more suited to what they're trying to do under David Moyes.
Yeah, I can see your point. I mean, my only reference was the 2 games against West Ham for Alkmaar last season, and they did like to dominate the ball. They played at real high intensity. They do, yeah, that's true, but they played at real high intensity as well. They moved it quickly, real fluidity in wide areas. And you're right, if that's what we get tonight, then and David touched on it, I think after the Kaiserslautern game, defensively they'll be tested against Norwich. Now, if that's basically lending itself to more of a counter-attacking philosophy, then as we again discussed on the Pink Pod, I think that is right up where David Wagner wants to take this Norwich team, that they are better as a counter-attacking team, and the type of player, the profile of player they've got in the building at the minute would be better suited to, as you say, turnovers, transition, swift through the phases, and then you're basically trying to attempt to test Alkmaar maybe with a bit more space in behind for the likes of Rowe and the likes of Ornell. Hopefully that's how it pans out, because if it does, I think that's the type of game that would suit Norwich actually. I think they're far better than the Wagners from all the sample of evidence that's growing now since he came in the building in January, when they are able to counter-attack it.
Millwall,
Blackburn, the one, yeah, the most recent one. Blackburn on Good Friday went there more hope than expectation, and they were just devastating on the counter. Both the goals they scored that day, razor sharp on transition, brilliantly finished executing moves, and you go back in further, the Wagner team that came up out of this division in the Championship, heavily constructed on its ability to counter-attack teams and bring teams onto them, and then be very good at going quickly through the other phases. So, yeah, if that's what we get tonight, the main man himself comes up behind you, Connor, then I think he'll probably be quite happy to find that type of game unfolding, because I think he'll feel that's better than, as they found maybe certainly at Kaiserslautern, when they're trying to break teams down. We haven't seen enough yet, but I think we can make some conclusions that that's not really what this team's about. They're not going to be able to find them little spaces and pick holes and get in that way. I think they're better when they've got a bit of space in behind to try and probe for any weakness.
Yes, it's a really interesting setup. As I just look over the camera, I think this is like a sports centre. So there's a swimming pool and a water slide, which, I think if I was a Norwich player after 45 minutes out there, I think I'd be tempted to go in there. You've got, just to our right is a block where Norwich City are changing it. It looks like some park, essentially, is the best way I can describe it. It looks like kind of like a school playground that they're kind of on, and they've got the medical treatments out of. But as we said, a glorious pitch, wonderful facilities. We've got a small stand here. There's plenty of yellow shirt stock around. You might be able to see them right in the back of.
You mentioned who's also here.
Go ahead.
Well, Mr. Weber,
we've seen him.
with Mr. Iger, and also interestingly, head of recruitment here.
Yeah,
Lee Dunn.
Well, let's pick it up on that point, because it's been a quiet week. There's been much made of it. Chris Sutton wrote a brilliant column for us this morning about where we are with it. You're going to put it to David Wagner again after the game, as you got a spider on the shoulder. As you
called him over now, you might have a word now.
If you want to do it live. Do you understand why fans are feeling a little bit? I don't know if concern's the word, but there's certainly a bubbling of something, isn't there, at the moment, about perceived to be a lull in the transfer?
Well, we put that directly to him after the Darmstadt game, wasn't it? And from that we got the no need to be concerned, the stones need to fall, that sort of analogy, and we're pretty much a week on from Darmstadt, and nothing is materially, the only transfer-related elements are Abu Kamara out to Portsmouth and Brad Hills out to Accrington Stanley. That's not
2 great loans.
Yeah, well, yeah, for those clubs, yeah. But yeah, no, completely. If that was the feeling pre-Darmstadt, then that's only going to intensify, really, isn't it, in an intervening period? Because I think there is a feeling they need to do something, particularly top end of the pitch. And there was a little hint, wasn't there, from David after Kaiserslautern when you spoke to him, that before Austria, which would of course be this Friday, they're flying out to Austria for 8 days. They might be able to do something, and we'll get an update from David Wagner after tonight's game. But
where would you expect that to be? Winger?
Oh yeah, definitely winger. Yeah, because we've got our science out again. We got into this. Keep wanting to, for some reason I keep talking back to our podcast. Go and listen, watch if you haven't, because all the bases are covered. But we got into this and where Norwich probably need to do something between now and the start of the season, and we did feel it was probably wide areas. And is a Kamara moving out, opening up some spaces as well. I think that's all part of the equation. So, yeah, if you was going to stick my neck out and say they will do something before Austria, then I would say that's going to be in the wide areas. And I think it needs something now. It needs a little bit of a pep up, because there is a feeling, yes, they were out the traps early. Yes, they got the mentality parts of the business done, didn't they, with the older, experienced players. But now, as Chris talked about his Pinkham column today, had a bit of quality, which I'm sure he wasn't. That wasn't a slight at Barnes or Stacey or Shane Dutty.
It's a different side.
Yeah, which Science was, to be fair. A young, up and coming, exciting wide player. But
and maybe people feel differently, right? If he doesn't get injured,
they do. Yeah, I think so. I think they do. Yeah,
there's nature of circumstance.
That's unfortunately something that was outside their control. But in the here and now, he's not available. Won't be until October, and they probably do need to do another one in that area of the pitch. As soon as, because I'm sure if you're David Wagner, while he exudes patience in regards of don't worry, don't panic, no need to be concerned, he wants players in the building because he wants to integrate them and have them fully up to speed before we go into the whole game. You don't really want them. We see it every summer. The season's already underway. You've got the distraction, the big distraction of trying to win games of football while dealing with all this transfer stuff in the background. It's not healthy. It's not conducive to gelling something and getting that momentum early on. So you can guarantee, whatever he outwardly projects about, he's very serene about the whole process. He'll want the business in as soon as any Norwich fan, I'm sure.
Yeah, and a lot of those fans are going to be judging on just how quick and how good that start is as well, particularly hinged onto the back of last season. So maybe internally he's conveying very different emotions to what he's showing us and showing supporters externally as well. And we know of these things, even though it's calm on the surface, I'm sure it's anything but underneath. So it's a bit watch the space. We'll obviously speak to David after the game and get an update on that front. I think that sums us up nicely. We must say thank you as well to Camel Healthcare, our sponsors, for their support during Norwich City's pre-season trips. This is obviously 2 of 3. We're going to fly out to Austria next Monday for the game against Toulouse in Kufstein, which is split into 3 40 minutes on Tuesday, fly back Wednesday, and then obviously we'll be at Carrow Road for Olympiacos thereafter. So David Wagner described after Kaiserslautern as being like the half-term of pre-season. Well, this is certainly the real stretch against 3 really good teams. Let's see what Norwich City are made of, and hopefully we leave here tonight with perhaps a little bit more optimism than we did on Saturday. Thank you very much for watching. Then you'll be able to see some of them. Pinkham.com, the place to go for all the coverage. We'll see you over there.